Now, David, did you bring enough tridents for the whole class? Oh, looks like you did. Hello there, and welcome back to Roguecraft. It's been a while. How you been? So you know, this last year has been interesting. There haven't been many Roguecraft videos this year, and I feel bad about that. But I mean, and there are many reasons. I don't really want to go into all that again. But one I haven't discussed is, in the middle of everything else, I lost a hard drive which had a ton of unedited footage on it, mostly Roguecraft stuff. So every time I think it's time for a Roguecraft video, I look at what I have and just end up noping out of frustration. But that said, I'm going to try and make something with what little I have and at least show some of the things I did along the way. You know, sometimes adversity forces us to be a little creative, and that can be a good thing. So let's see what we can do. Now, as I showed in episode 1, my portal came out right next to a fortress. Sadly, this fortress was never really all that good for spawning wellies. Not a lot of time was spent here at this fortress other than to make it somewhat safe to travel through. With all the mobs in the area, just wellies weren't going to spawn. So the search began for a second fortress, and after hours and hours of exploration, I managed to find this fortress just a couple hundred blocks away. This one seemed to spawn wellies a bit more than the first, so work began to do some basic transformation to slab off the spots I didn't want wellies to spawn on, and try and corral them down in the walkways. But as sometimes happens with these farms, it ended up killing what few spawns I was getting. It's a weird fact when converting a fortress to a sort of farm, that without spawn-proofing all the areas around it, the slabbing off of some of the areas can actually ruin a fortress for even low-level farming. The location isn't all that great, and this would require a ton of work to make it a viable farm, so the real search for a good location began. After tunneling off in every direction for thousands, and I do mean thousands of blocks, I stumbled on this location over here. It's mostly in a soul sand valley and over lava, which makes it a good prospect for a farm. It's not perfect, but by this time I was sick of tunneling around, and so it was decided this would be the location of the Wither Skeleton Farm. You know, the committee being me, myself, and I. We decided. Ultimately, I would build a farm around one of the crosswalks in the fortress, but before that, I started general work on the whole fortress to have it function as a low-level manual farm. I found that slabbing off the tops of the walls is a good step 1, as that prevents wellies from spawning up there and getting killed and knocked off into the lava, and, you know, you don't get to skull that way. And then a good step 2 is mine the walkways down 1 layer. This puts your head below the top of the wall and minimizes the chances of any blazes seeing you and taking pot shots from a mile away. Once those annoyances were handled, work on the actual farm started. So for this farm, I chose this crosswalk over here to be the central point. The reason being that off in that direction and that direction over there is nothing but Soul Sand Valley for miles and miles. Which is good because the spawn rates for mobs is relatively low in there. So low that we technically don't have to spawn-proof those chunks and can still get good rates at the farm without doing it. And if you wanted to go for extra credit, you could spawn-proof them from skellies and enderments simply by placing torches like you would for regular mob spawning in the overworld. Now, the other end of the fortress is too close to nether wastes and a warped forest to make it ideal for a farm. I mean, you could use it, but it would require a lot of spawn proofing, so best to avoid it. And over there is a basalt delta, and those are a nightmare to spawn proof. That biome is the only thing making this location not the greatest for a farm. I know from experience that basalt deltas can kill your rates on these farms. They are horrible. But all that said, I don't have any footage of me actually making the farm, so let's jump to what it looks like now. Okay, so you can see that I tore out the crosswalk and made it a flat fortress farm. This block marks the center of the original crosswalk, and this square area around that location is where the wither skellies have the highest spawn rates. This outer ring of stone brick with buttons on it is to improve the pack spawning rates of the wellies. If you are looking for super detailed explanations of how spawning works, I'll leave a link to a Logical Geek Boy video from years ago that explains it very well, but I'll do my best to summarize here. Essentially, the game will check this inner square area for mob spawns. One of them might happen right here on the edge of the spawn area. So it now knows one mob will spawn here, but wither skeletons spawn in packs. And pack spawning searches the area around the original spawn location for 5 blocks. So even though these buttoned areas can't be considered for the initial spawn, they might be a location for the pack. If all this was walled off or just wasn't here, then those members of the pack just wouldn't appear. So with it, the farm gets slightly better spawn rates than without. And as you can see, I placed a ceiling over everything to prevent ghasts from being ghasts and ruining my day while in the farm. You see, I like to run these farms manually. It just adds a little bit of excitement to the day, and we're a small server here and don't need hundreds and hundreds of beacons, so I don't need the rates that would only come from automation. And because I like to fight the mobs, that's why these little safety zones in the corners exist, just in case I get caught not paying attention. I can run over here and heal up. Same goes for the crosswalk areas on the sides. If I get overwhelmed, I can always run outside of the farm and catch my breath. Now right now the farm is obviously empty because I'm standing here. Let's see if we can get it loaded up with some mobs. This path here was created to make use of the soul speed enchant, and it allows me to run away from the horrible basalt delta and force all those magma cubes to despawn. When I'm at the end of the tunnel, the only areas that can spawn mobs are the platform and the Soul Sand Valley sections I haven't lit up with torches. Let's take a quick jog back and see how many mobs we got to spawn. And as you can see, the farm works pretty well. I mean, I haven't even blocked off all the spawn areas in the rest of the fortress, and this is how many showed up after just one run. I don't know about you, but that's enough excitement for me. Because the farm uses the crosswalk area, there are only 4 mobs that will spawn inside the box. Wither skeletons, blazes, magma cubes, and ziglins. And with turtle egg traps set out on the 4 paths out of the farm, the ziglins aren't a concern. In fact, they are usually all dead and gone before I make it back to the platform. It's rare for me to see them running off into one of the death pits like that. And then with the use of fire resistance potions, it's just a matter of a few sword swings and a lot of bow shots. And soon I'm off and running to refill the platform with more craziness. I'm definitely happy with how the farm turned out. I could automate it, I could put wither roses in here and make it just so wither skeletons spawn in, but this is enough. And if I feel the need to massacre a few mobs, I just run out here and chop a few up. But I think that's going to do it for today. Be sure to let me know what you think of the mob farm in the comments below. But until next time, I have been Gragore, and this has been Rowcraft. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, always try and find a way to make it fun. See ya!